So it's perfectly obvious that a forecast is central to everything buyer and seller side of a deal, and in fact should be in place well before. But what should be in this forecast? You've mentioned EBITDA a few times there. What else should a forecast have? We talk about a three-way model quite a bit. Is that critical to
Yeah,
your
I
side?
mean, one of the important things, I mean, generally businesses are reasonably good at putting together the P&L bit, and then forget about how the forecast links into the cash flow and the balance sheet. Um, it's important that cash flow is modeled as accurately as possible, so it all flows through. But if you're a private equity business raising significant leverage to buy, um, then you want to make sure that you're putting the right amount of leverage in, that the cash flow, that you can service the debt you've put on the business. So that means that the cash flows need to be accurate. And there's a lot of focus initially on transactions around EBITDA, valuation, which is multiples of EBITDA or DCFs, etc. But people get fixated on EBITDA, but sometimes forget to really model through the detailed cash flow. So we're talking about a business that's in growth. The investment into people, the investment into IT, the investment
growing businesses sucking cash.
Yeah, exactly. So what sort of debt can you put on the business? So you really need to go through all of that rigorously, and that you're reflecting the investment, but also there may be synergies. So there may be two businesses coming together and there's cost coming out. So probably one of the areas which I think is generally weak in forecasting is the cash flow side.
So, and to me, that means the working capital assumptions, because you get the working capital assumptions right, get the movement in debtors, movement in creditors, that comes out as payments and receipts in a cash flow. So strong modelling around the working capital, and of course CapEx. It's not just one line. It's like, what are we buying? What profile are we buying it in? Are we buying on lease or finance or whatever? There's usually a good forecast to me has those sections in it as well. You presumably seen some good forecasts with those in as well.
Yeah, and actually what we do find in transactions when, past life, but, you're coming in, as an advisor, you're looking at the business, you're spending time with the finance team, and then suddenly you kind of say, well, why have we got such a large debtor balance? And it may be just trapped value in the business by not managing the working capital, or there's pieces of land or buildings which actually are best spun out now rather than given free to the new owner. So there's all this kind of, by forecasting, by thinking about your balance sheet as much as your cash flow, as much as your P&L, you start to see actually there's inherent value within the business, which in a transaction we may not get value for. So maybe we need to employ an extra credit controller or two to really work hard on bringing our working capital down and normalizing that to rather than being a bit lazy, maybe because it's costing us some money. So we see a lot of that. Just the forecasts really help bring out the trap value in a business, which can be taken.
And that can have a direct impact on the amount of financing you take, on potentially the EBITDA. So it's not just theoretical; it have a real world value in a transaction.
Absolutely.
So you spoke about people concentrating on EBITDA a bit too much. Told me a funny story about what can happen if you concentrate a bit too much. It was like a bit of a war story.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of war stories about forecasts and forecasts being wrong or forecasts not being achieved. But probably the one that springs to mind is, again, a long time ago, we worked with a business where we went through a whole transaction, and it was a large transaction. So I think the EV of the business was £260 million. So it was a large transaction, a lot of people involved. And for whatever reason, everybody was focused on EBITDA. Because it wasn't effectively a private equity backed business, a private equity deal, everybody was looking at above the line rather than below the line. And it was only that, it was actually post transaction that somebody looked at the depreciation line and figured out that actually it was a plug number which had run all the way through and was about half what the depreciation number should have been. But that comes back to our discussions around cash flow and not, you've got to look at the whole forecast, the integrity of the forecast. And if that business had modeled correctly, then you wouldn't have had an issue around depreciation because it would have all flowed through. But yes, it caused some issues post-deal because basically everybody, including the advisors, hands up, missed that the depreciation number was not accurate.
Am I right in remembering that was on a spreadsheet?
It was on a spreadsheet, but it was a long time ago as well. Now I don't think that mistake would occur.
Well, no, everyone would have a modern JEDOC system now.
Yeah, and everybody makes mistakes. But look, I could josh about things like that, but integrity in your model is the whole thing that goes to the root of the valuation of a business, the belief in the management team. If it looks like the forecasts are too aggressive, then people kind of go, I don't believe this team. They just, they want a quick win, a quick buck. If the forecasts aren't very accurate, it kind of goes to the credibility of the finance team and, really what sort of controls do they have in the business. So mistakes undermine a transaction, and you want to make sure, and it comes back to what you said earlier, that forecasts aren't just built for a transaction. They're built, as a piece of MI which runs and it's inherent in the business and it's used. So it's key. I can't stress how key accurate forecasting is.
Excellent. Thank you.